Looks you like up on the bed.
Yay! Yay!
There. Okay. Considering the subject matter.
Okay. Thanks, James.
And I'm now officially getting ready to drive home.
We're live.
Yep.
Hello, everyone.
Hello,
Hello.
Miko.
Hi, Miko. Hi, James.
Hey, Sable, I'm going to text you something really quick.
What's that?
It'll be in voice chat.
Okay. Oh yeah, by the way, Moon, remind me at the end of the stream that I have a thing I would wish to discuss with you that Big T had an idea and it put together a couple of things we've been talking about. Forgot like how to approach cons and whatnot in my brain, and I have a thought and I'd like to run it by you.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, 100% we should.
Okay. I didn't want to say it on stream unless they weren't okay with that. You weren't okay with that.
Oh, I absolutely intend to as soon as we get a few more people. You bet. Yes. But yes, good point.
My stream still says we have 0 people watching, and I'm here.
Yeah,
So
it
I
might
guess
take a
I
minute.
don't count.
Yeah, you're not a person. That's
Yeah.
right.
Thanks, Twitch.
Well, mine says we have
Love, love,
5.
Miko.
Hi, Miko. You're awesome and amazing.
Well, that was strange.
What's that?
I just got kicked off the call.
Okay.
Weird.
I didn't even hear it go or anything. It didn't.
Yeah, me
Like, I
neither.
went in Discord and it told me I was in the call, but I wasn't in the call. It was really strange.
Weird.
To be
Yeah.
fair, I've
Thanks,
had
Discord.
times where I'd be in the call and say I'm connected, but then kick me off while still saying I'm in the call.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Discord, everyone. It's a wonderful, chaotic tool. The name is fitting. You don't
Yeah.
know whether you're on or you're not.
So is Twitch.
Yeah,
'Cause
and
it's
it's
tricky.
frightening that Twitch gets to decide what people. It's frightening that Twitch is now deciding what people are.
Yeah, I know.
right?
Trying to think a person. Now says there's
It
4
reminds me of the
people.
joke. It reminds me of the joke where so there's an area in Africa where no one wants it. It's called Terra Nullius. And it just so happens that when you look at it in Google Maps, just the big Google icon is in the middle of it. It's like Google has claimed this territory. By the way, that's something I would love to get into discussion with Sable about geography and such things as like Terra Nullius.
That would be fun. Sure. I mean, not today, obviously, but sure.
Obviously, but yeah, you'd be surprised how many places in the world are Terra Nullius, the places that nobody wants.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of those places only exist because 2 people want one place and are too scared to go to war over it. So, it's kind of ironic because these 2 places want this one place. They also don't want this one place.
Yeah.
Well, I believe they should follow my policy and punish their neighbor for the crime of being both close and vulnerable.
Yeah. Don't talk shit when you're in fist range.
Right. Especially if you're not prepared to take a fist.
Yeah. That's a mighty big mouth you got there. It'd be a shame if someone went out and punched it suddenly. One of my favorite lines in a movie. And then there's my favorite line from King of the Hill. That's awful big talk for someone within pocket sand range.
For somebody, what?
Within pocket sand range. Dale would always carry around a pocket full of sand to throw at people to blind them.
BRB.
Wait. Hello, Atoru.
Hi,
Hello, hello.
Future Night Queen.
Our future undead overlord.
Spoilers.
Yeah, well, it's an elected position. We know it.
Yeah, everybody knows.
I was gonna say, I say that to the creators of GOT and the people who already announced it.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's gonna be fun. Just because we know this doesn't mean our characters know this.
No.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
I like to think of this foresight that we provided ourselves as the inevitable after sight that our characters will have afterwards. Like, how are we supposed to know? And then we look back. How didn't we see the signs?
I mean, no, it's not going to be like that because Rue has described some physical symptoms that Atora Rue is experiencing that I think are pretty likely to twig Sable to it.
Yeah.
Sable has had more than enough experience with Night Monarchs and their transformations now. She's probably going to be like, "Uh-oh."
I like to think that because of Barbarossa and where he is and like where his position is. He has a lot of experience with handling the undead. Considering he was once turned into.
You cut out.
Considering he was once turned into one, and he's fought
Yeah.
in what now 3 Word Wars.
Mm-hmm.
I think he has, and him being the frontline guy that he is. I feel like he probably knows more about zombies than most people.
That's fact.
Yeah, I think we're not stupid and we learn. I think that our characters do pick things up, but the thing is, the zombies also, right? That's war.
Yeah, they got
That's
zombies
the
driving
problem.
tanks
The zombies
now.
also learn.
Yeah, we got zombies driving tanks
Okay,
now.
hey, that's awesome.
Yeah,
No,
Nuggies
that
driving
was
what?
not
This is
awesome at the Battle
you
of Spring Beach. No.
Yeah,
Have
Nuggies
you guys
driving
ever
tanks too.
play? There's a game called Zombie Army, I think it is. It's basically you're fighting zombie Germans in World War II. And like it's like it has like a lot of satanic ritual stuff in it. And they do have like fully automated tanks, which are just like the most disturbing thing you see. And my brain is going to that for this zombie tanks. You can find a zombie train.
They don't have that kind of infrastructure, and they have no way to build it because they only exist for 1 month out of the year usually.
Yeah.
Fortunately for us, right?
Yeah, right.
What they can do is steal existing infrastructure once they have taken over. Say they go and convert the armory in Kelowna, which is what they did before attacking Kin Beach. And they can steal the shit in the armory in Kelowna.
Did you just say zombie trains? Because I have a TV show that's zombie trains. That's basically the entire premise.
Just
Oh,
tanks.
you mean train? You mean Train to Busan, right?
No, I do not. I mean, Cabaneri of the Iron Fortress.
Yeah. No. In the game, the zombie train is quite literally the train has a heart.
That's weird.
So interestingly enough here, Barbarossa, further to your, I figure Feral Finder knows a few things about zombies now, guys. In the First World War, figuring out what would reasonably happen in terms of like troops and whatnot, because by the time House Chiroptera falls, right, the public is aware that the zombie apocalypse is happening, right? So they actually send the military, right? But you guys were in Prince George, so what's stationed there, right? A regiment or a two of Rocky Mountain Rangers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you guys had a regiment of Rocky Mountain Rangers fighting to defend the cavern, and they had more than 60% casualties. They were slaughtered.
Jesus Christ.
Well, I figure, this would have been the first battle that the that military troops would have faced off against undead. They
Like
had
the
no
first face
idea
off
what.
against tanks in World War One.
Yeah, exactly. This is what we have going on here. Is basically one situation where the conditions are completely unknown to everybody, right? So yeah, the casualty count is disgusting, right? It's part of the reason why it was an apocalypse,
And
but people learn.
I was gonna say in the First World War, I remember I was trying to be a zombie because I thought that'd be hilarious, and I kept missing it by that much. I like to think that in the World War, Barbarossa was purposely like getting into these suicide missions just to learn about them.
That makes sense.
And somehow survived most of them.
Yeah, I survived all of them. I didn't become a zombie in the First World War. That was the second one.
Oh, so only I became a zombie?
Yep. Only you did. I managed to survive, and I only remember this because I was really, really mad when I didn't get it because it was the spinning wheel. It almost landed on my name, and then it fudged to the next name. And Sable made a joke about it.
Yep. That was a little close for comfort.
Yeah.
He
Hey,
got
we are
snatched with
officially
his
on
turn.
stream now. We're
Okay.
officially in the sprint. And so therefore, right, you're on.
Well, today is a special stream, yes. All right. I guess I'll pour my camera. All right. Hello. My name is Diane Morrison. I'm known in the community as Sable and of military sci-fi fantasy. I'm doing a little series of stuff writers and game masters if they, like it's kind of designed for people who don't know anything about war but have to deal with a war in whatever their story is. So today we're going to talk about a topic that we started talking about briefly on Tuesday, which was our how to plan your, and we're going to talk about the different uses of troops in a military context. Which first we're going to break down to a basic concept that you can use as kind of a guidepost when you need a general idea of how the armies are going to move against each other in your conflict.
And what's
And then if we
generally
have
going to
time, we'll
happen
flesh
in
it
that
out.
conflict too, right? Like if you know that one side's got heavy cavalry and the other side has heavy infantry, you can be assured there's going to be a lot of damage.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
You know.
So just to start at the beginning, right, I'll say that it's very important when you're planning war in your story that you make sure not to neglect either side. This is something I often, right?
Yeah.
Break down the rock, paper, scissors so I can make a graphic really fast? Sure. I will do that in one moment. Just finding where this is in my notes here. There it is. Okay. Right, because that's... And Barbarossa, who is a historian with a special in matters military, and Aaron, who was a junior officer in Canadian Navy, they're going to help me break this down. They may do more talking than I do. I think they probably know more about it. So we're gonna let them teach me a thing or two today as well.
Well, you probably know
All right,
more
so
about it than I do because my stuff's all sea battle stuff.
that's going to be relevant,
but,
right?
yeah.
That's going to be relevant too. Okay, so
I'll say this.
Yeah.
I was gonna say an example of ignoring one side over the other in a book.
Yes.
There's a popular series called Powder Mage that I love. It was the inspiration to how I got into Flintlock Fantasy. However, I do not know how. So, premise: you have a very small country, like practically a fingertip on a map, compared to basically Russia, which is huge on their map. And somehow the smaller country wins, but also we never really understand what the other army is made of. We know it's cavalry, and we don't really know their logistics. And also they have 1 million troops compared to this army's 50,000.
Well,
and somehow the smaller country wins?
I have to say, look at Ukraine and Russia right now.
Yeah, so that's fair. However, it's immediately described in the book that they're fighting on equal playing field. The only difference is one has sorcerers and one has powder.
Yeah.
But it never really describes how the Kez are losing so badly.
Yeah.
Yeah, stuff like this kind of bothers me. Right?
Yep.
When you're dealing with your conflict, you do need to pay attention to both sides, and I find that often neglect one another. Either they want to talk about the very cool army that is the center of their heroes, right, and the army that their hero serves, and they want to talk about how wonderful and great they are, and we don't really understand the army, right? Or they want the evil empire to seem like these big badasses that are absolutely awesome and capable of kicking ass, and a couple of plucky little heroes from this smaller army are going to save the day. Well, that's possible. It is possible.
Sure, Audie
It's
Murphy.
really hard, and it involves some real intelligent strategy, right? and some very good tactics. So you do need to understand equally well what both sides are doing. In any given war, one side is going to make a move and the other side is going to make a move. And then if they can get an advantage from there, they're going to press an offensive. And then the other side is going to, and that's how it works, right? And it's back and forth. Also, nobody stands still in a war, right? There's constantly going to be looking for technology to counteract the other side's technology. So
Or
if
our
one side has
technology,
mages, exactly. I was about to use a magical technology example, as a matter of fact, arcanology, right? If one side has mages and the other side does not, then the other side that doesn't have mages is going to be for things like anti-magic fields, what kind of metals might be resistant to magic, etc. Right? They're going to look for ways to counter the advantage. And they're going to find it if the war goes on long enough, because people aren't stupid. And then somebody else is going to have to, the other side is going to have to come get around the counter. That is how arms races work. And there is an arms race in every war. Right? So you do have to think about what they're both doing. And that means you got to think about why one side is making a move, why the other side is making another move, and how they're going to, how the conflict is going to go once they meet, right? This will help you do that. Let's go back to the rock, paper, scissors, exactly like Moon says. There are 4 types, 4.5, because artillery is kind of its own thing, as Barbarossa pointed out, and we're going to discuss that too. Basically, there are 4 types of units in every given battle scenario. And if it's not actually these things, then different types of units on the field, no matter what the field is, in the air, on land, whatever it is, they're going to imitate these roles in relation to each other, right? So you can boil them down to these 4. And I loved this. When I was told this, I was like, light went on in my head. I was like, this is going to be so much easier. So maybe it'll help as mistakes. Okay, there is heavy infantry, light infantry, heavy cavalry, and light cavalry. And then there's artillery. And that's it. Everything can be boiled down to those things. So, how it works. Heavy cavalry is going to beat light infantry. Heavy infantry will beat or heavy cavalry, pardon me. Yeah.
But it'll be
light
bloody.
Cavalry, pardon me?
But it'll be bloody.
Yeah, it's going to be ugly, but they will win, yes. I'll tell you why when we get there. There's actually a very good reason for that. Light cavalry will beat heavy infantry. And between light infantry and light cavalry, it will depend on who has the superior range with their weaponry.
So it's heavy cavalry beats light infantry, heavy infantry beats heavy cavalry, light cavalry beats heavy infantry?
Correct. Yes. And thank you for making a graphic. This will be handy.
And what was the last point? Sorry.
Last
no
point
problem.
is generally light infantry beats light cavalry, but if light cavalry has superior range on their weaponry, they will win.
Okay.
Then my general rule is if it's artillery, anything heavy will beat the artillery. The artillery will decimate anything that's light.
Yep, I would agree with that assessment.
Devastate and decimate.
There's a reason why the charge of the light brigade only happened once.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll get into that later.
Yes, we will. All right. So, the advantage of light troops is mobility. If you need to move things quickly, you want light troops. This is why in asymmetrical warfare, you see a lot of troop action. They need to get in and get out quickly. If they get into a face-to-face confrontation with the bigger force, they're going to get creamed. They know that. They're not stupid. So in, out, as fast as you can. Do as much damage as you can when you're in. Leave.
Right, which is why light cavalry is really good for that.
Yeah, I was going to say your light units are mainly going to be your saboteurs, your sappers, and your scouts. And possibly skirmishers, but skirmishers are mainly there to bring them back to the heavy.
Yeah, right?
Yes.
So that would include, in modern warfare, this includes things like helicopters or light cavalry.
Yep, that's why they have the air cavalry.
Right.
They're there to get in, pick up the dudes, get out.
Yeah, or get in, drop off the dudes, get out.
Yep.
You know? Right.
Helicopter can only get hit so many times before that propeller decides, I'm not working anymore.
Yeah.
Now, what if we're thinking about something like dogfighting? Let's apply that since we're on the subject.
Okay.
So dogfighting is going to be interesting. I would consider heavy to be your bombers, your big bombers, by the way. Anything that has like a bull turret, like your light bombers, those are going to be actually light because they're flimsy.
Like Cav.
Fighters are interesting because fighters would kind of fall under heavy because they're meant to be hit and they're meant to like show up, do damage, and block. So yeah, I would say anything light would be your bombers, your transports, your cargo. But fighters, attack helicopters, those are your heavies because they are meant to go in with the big machine guns, the heavy armor. They're there to take all the damage while the bombers drop everything. The bombers should not get hit.
So what if we take anti-aircraft artillery into consideration? I think in that particular scenario, those are the heavy. They don't move, they're well defended, and they do a lot of damage when they hit you.
Yep.
Right? In which case, how does that change the relation to bombers and fighters?
So a bomber, if you look at like World War II, the bombers had very thin skin.
Mm-hmm.
They got tore apart easily. Look at like Ye Olde Pub, and that amazing story.
Yeah.
They get shredded apart. Where the bombers, it has all your oxygen stuff. Any part of that plane that falls off, you are now losing. Where a fighter, it can lose like almost half the plane and still keep fighting. So I would say even with anti-artillery, that's still the case. A bomber is light and a fighter is heavy.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Because I was thinking of it the other way around. Right? And the reason why is because your fighters are right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we're talking about the advantage of light troops is mobility, they're the ones with the mobility. So interesting that, I guess you could look at it either way.
So for me, when I think of light, I think of mobility, I think of speed, I think of heavy as tanks. I think that they're there to take the damage, they're there to protect, they're there to make the stand, to be stalwart and strong. They're there to take as many hits as possible, where the light is meant to get in, get out, talk about it afterwards.
I'll compare that to a land battle. Now, Daz made the excellent point, it's a truism in war, you guys know this, I'm sure, that you don't just send tanks, right?
Yeah.
Tanks require infantry support.
Yeah, otherwise infantry will fuck them up.
This is something that for some reason the Russians, these stages of the Russia-Ukraine war, right? They tended to just send tanks into shit and then wonder why they were getting taken over and stolen by the Ukrainians, right? But because they didn't have infantry, why is this the case? Why do you need
Because
infantry?
tanks move slow.
Yes.
Because tanks move slow.
React slow.
Not only that, but they react slow. They have a gun. They have a huge gun. A gun that can punch a hole through a wall, another wall, and a person. They have the artillery. But have you ever seen a tank turn around? It takes a good hour. Even with the gun just turning around, it takes a good hour. It's slow. So what you need is you need to make sure that there's no one doing like they did in World War II, which is hopping on top of the tank, open up the hatch, putting in a grenade, and saying "Happy Birthday, Germans."
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So in that scenario, what the tanks are heavy cavalry, are they not?
Yes.
I would say yes.
We call the motor pool, like we call the APCs and the APC's armored personnel carrier, if somebody doesn't know, right? And tanks, we call them cavalry, right?
Yep.
So in that case, this would be light infantry or heavy infantry protecting the heavy cavalry.
Oh, light infantry. Light.
Yes.
I say light infantry. Well, no, you're right. Heavy infantry.
Heavy infantry.
Okay.
They don't require mobility in the protection field, right? They require to be able to stand against light infantry that are going to be coming at them.
I was gonna say normally when you have tanks like that, the light infantry.
You cut out.
Heavy infantry. It's always the tanks against the infantry.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you can also call armored AF. That's how they're designated in some forces. The Canadian designate as TAPVs, which stands for Tactical Armored Patrol Vehicle, which actually gives you a better idea used. Because they're light cavalry, they're used the way that light cavalry is used, which, like Barbarossa said at the beginning of this, your scouts, your skirmishers, right? Stuff like that. Their job is to find out where the enemy, deal with them quickly if they're a small group, right? Or lead them back to the bulk of the army if they're not, right? So that the big guys can take care of them.
A good way to remember this is your lights are the your lights are taunting the enemy to fuck around, and then they're leading them to the find out part.
Yes. Yeah, and the difference between an AFC carries troops, AFVs are covered in guns.
Yeah. Or in the case of the Bradley fighting vehicle, guns, tanks, and missile launchers for some reason.
They can be
the Bradley fighting vehicle is the exact fucking reason why you cannot fight war by committee.
Yep.
That's a different subject I'd prefer not to get on right now.
Yeah. But
right?
the Bradley fighting vehicle is what?
To answer Flub,
Ridiculous.
Yes, often that's true. Light cavalry, one of its uses in war, scout the enemy and find out where they are. Right?
Yep,
and then lead them into an ambush if possible. 100%.
Yep, that is
Here's
the
question for you that you guys might find an interesting question. We've been talking about what they are a whole bunch, but how do you define them in a couple words? What's the quick and easy definition?
So,
define which?
Light infantry,
heavy cavalry, light infantry, light cavalry, heavy infantry, and artillery.
Okay.
So, for me, light is going to be unarmored. Now, that does not mean that they have no plate. It means that they have gambeson, but they're meant to be light. They do not have any armor. They're fast, and they do not purposely go into combat.
Yeah.
Okay, so the way Jamie explained this, go ahead with your heavy explanation. Yeah.
And heavy is armored. They are the frontal assault, or they are the wall that is protecting. Either way, they are purposely there to fight. That is their purpose. The scouts are to lead. The scouts are there to lead you to the fight.
How Jamie explained this to me, right? Light troops have an advantage of mobility, and heavy troops have the advantage of defensive.
Yeah.
Right? The weapon of a heavy force is its momentum. Right? It takes a while to get going, but once it does, that is the unstoppable force. Right? If you're using heavy troops against other troops, then it's the unstoppable force meets the immovable object, and shit gets ugly, which is a good way to think about it. You really don't want to have heavy troops face off against each other if you can avoid it, because that is going to be a bloodbath.
Basically, I'm doing this for the graphic. That's going to sum up all of this stuff.
Okay.
So, heavy infantry, what would you say is the difference between infantry and cavalry, do you think?
Vehicle.
Cavalry has more maneuverability than infantry, is how I would put that. Right? You cannot, heavy cavalry armor, but you cannot armor them as in many ways as you can the infantry usually. Like if we're talking, depending on what war we're talking about, right? But I mean, that one is difficult to boil down into a simplistic principle. So, because it's not necessarily true depending on the situation.
I have an idea for this.
Okay.
Basically, I'm just going to say the difference between heavy and light instead of having the difference between infantry, cavalry.
I see. Use that as the basis and then split it from there. That probably makes sense.
Infantry and cavalry is the use of mobility aids. Right?
Yes.
Mechanized infantry are actually like cavalry. All right.
Well, very similar.
You know, right? Right? If the mobility is granted to the use of a mobility aid, whether that's a horse, a camel, or a tank, right, then it's cavalry. Right? If its mobility is granted to the use of less armor, then it's light.
Okay, so two questions here. One for Stretch. I am not as familiar with the details of individual weapons of modern warfare. So maybe you guys would suggest Jackals are light cav,
yes.
Challenger 2s are heavy cav?
Yes, Challenger 2s are tanks.
Okay, yeah.
They're
all right. And then
Jackals are light armored fighting vehicles.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep, then yes. Yeah, Flub says, yes, but wouldn't mechanized infantry be better ability?
Yes. That's why cavalry beats infantry in mobility.
Yeah, okay, so further to the point, I have other notes here, right? Heavy means you have better armor, better offensive capability, but less mobility. Light means you have projectile weapons and mobility, right? Light generally has the weapons with the range.
Ranged weapons and mobility.
Yeah, ranged weapons and mobility. Yeah. Like this could be... the Mongols made amazing... Right? Basically, the Mongols specialized in light cavalry. Right? And how they handled this was that they would have a group of guys ride in, shoot at the infantry and whatnot as they went, and loop back out. And then a group of guys would come in and do the same thing. So this is basically like getting peppered with a constant flow of arrows, right? That is their primary battle tactic. And it was very effective in the medieval.
In the medieval age, yeah.
They were less successful at siege, right? But they still could do a lot with sieges because they had logistics and mobility, right? So they were generally able to cut off the supply chain of a given defensive fortress, like a castle, right? And then they would just continue supplying themselves until they starved the siege out, which they were willing to do, right? So that brings us to another point, which is to say, in any given well-entrenched defense, in order to beat it, you need at least 3 times the number of troops as the defenders.
Yeah.
That is the minimum.
3 times the offensive strength is the defensive strength.
Yes. So if there's 1,000 guys in,
you cut out after 1,000 guys.
Defeating. If you have 1,000 guys in a castle, you need at least 3,000 to have a hope of beating it.
Yeah.
I'm going to pop in and out. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
That solved that problem, hopefully.
Yeah.
So this is why when you get heavy infantry versus heavy cavalry, although it will be a bloodbath, the heavy infantry will win. The reason why is because they are more of an entrenched defense. Now, am I missing anything on this point, guys?
Not that I know of.
What's that, Sparkles? You're talking, but we cannot hear you.
Yeah. It doesn't say you're muted either.
I love Discord. Discord is my friend.
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Now we can hear you.
I was gonna say. No, I think you pretty much nailed everything I was gonna say.
Yeah. You cut out again. After we can't hear you.
I'm gonna talk to him right now.
Oh, okay. You're keeps flashing that you are. You're in your vehicle?
No, I actually just got into the house, so let me cut out for a little bit while my phone. Let me restart my phone.
Okay. We're gonna take a 5-minute break here.
Sure. And Babe, look at Moon's graphic in the voice chat. I think it's perfect.
Okay. I will look at it.
Good. I'm also making a notes slide, but
Okay.
I'm also making the center graphic bigger and putting doodles on it, but that's the information.
Yep. We're taking a brief break, you say?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to take an opportunity to take a bio. I'll see you guys in a moment.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's perfect. Well done.
Thank you. I will share it as soon as we are ready for that.
Yeah.
I have to re-download it though because I changed a little bit of sizing.
Ooh. Nico, I understand that nervousness. Hugs to you, honey.
No, I said copy link, not copy image. There you go, guys, if you want the link.
I hope you get a good diagnosis anyways for your therapy evaluation.
Hugs to Miko.
Hugs to Nico.
I'm gonna go buy a real quick beer.
Okay. And I have to say, in response to those threats, the one issue with an entrenched defense is that their static mobile units can outmaneuver and outflank them is usually. And it all depends upon the force that you're trying to outmaneuver and outflank. Right? If they have counters to your maneuvering, right? Like anti-tank weapons and stuff, which heavies generally do. Yeah, I understand, Nico. I hope that they say that you can get into some therapy.
Okay, I am back.
Welcome back. When will you know? Are you in the office at the moment or something? Or just finished talking to them? Or yeah, exactly. It's very true. Stretch, that's very much a fact. Right? That's where the arms races come in, right? You know, when you have something that is unstoppable in war, right, sooner or later they will find some way to stop it. Oh, okay.
Miko, stressing yourself out is not going
Don't
to help
stress
you.
yourself out about it. Yeah, you'll be fine. You'll get into some therapy and it'll help with the depression and stuff. It'll be great. All right.
I'm back.
Welcome back.
We're
Welcome
still on
back.
break, I recognize, which is
Yeah,
fine.
for 14
While we're
seconds.
on the break and while we're talking with Miko, I would like to urge you all to go support Miko's fun GoFundMe. She has some
Yeah,
medical expenses that she needs to pay. She doesn't have the money. I'm sure our community can help her out. Um, the link, I didn't get a chance to go do it before I got on stream, but I will certainly be contributing. I hope that I can convince everybody else to do the same, even if
yeah,
it's a couple of bucks.
yeah.
It'll help.
Just even $1 helps, you know, because it adds up. And I personally have an opinion that everybody can afford to skip one Starbucks coffee. Or the
And if you
equivalent.
can't, you're probably not online anyway.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right. Nico's off to her appointment.
Good luck.
Good luck, Miko.
We were just waiting for Sparkles to get back. He had to reboot his phone. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, that Stretch makes a good point there. Just like in martial arts, there's a counter to the counter to the counter.
Yeah, I was saying that's how the arms races begin. When you encounter something unstoppable in war, sooner or later, if the war goes on long enough, they will find a way to stop it. And then,
Yeah.
Well.
And then that changes the conditions of the fight, because if you're like, okay, we're going to send in our big battleships, right? Because we know they're going to win this fight, and then all of a sudden there's these little ships that are basically the equivalent of little gunboats that are better armored than the big ships and have like enormously destructive guns on them, right?
Yeah.
Well, that changes the whole battlefield, doesn't it? Right.
That's why those big ships were no longer made or used after World War II.
Yeah, absolutely. But then as the 20th century wore on, right, refueling technology for aircraft became more efficient. And then somebody had the idea, hey, what if we put a bunch of aircraft on what's basically a floating island and brought the island with us to the fight? Hence aircraft carriers. And that completely changed the naval battlefield. And one of the reasons why the Americans have been so successful is that
super carriers,
they're the guys who have the big carriers, right? But is that changing now is something that's a discussion among people who think about the science of war, because now we have little commercial drones, right? We can strap a pipe bomb to, right, with duct tape and like send quite a distance, right? Are big aircraft carriers about to become obsolete? Maybe so.
Well, right? Yeah, because the phalanx guns won't train on anything that small.
Yep. So you cannot use your artillery.
Well, you can't use your phalanx, right?
Yep.
On the super carriers, which is the anti-missile system, right? Shoot.
So now are we back to a bunch of guys standing there with shotguns?
Yeah.
Looking for drones in the sky to shoot them down?
Yeah.
Probably. Right?
Because basically what happens eventually as the technology gets more and more complex as the wars go on and such, that eventually the simplest solution is a guy with a bat. Right?
Yep. If you want to read a really good book that drives home this point about how technology is constantly countering each other, The Forever War by Joe Haldeman. It is an amazing science fiction book, right? The premise is, based on his own Vietnam War experience, Joe Haldeman was writing about a war that was taking a place against an alien culture, right? But relativity still is a thing, right? So every time they travel over major distances and then come home, a bunch of time has passed. And technology has upgraded like centuries in their absence.
Mhm.
So there's huge shifts of war technology over this time. At one time, it literally is, because of the way force field technology has developed, the biggest and most effective tactic they have is a bunch of guys in, basically this like super high-tech alloy plastic armor, right? With what is effectively a baseball bat. Yes. That's what's going on. Yep, because that is how war works. It will continue to counter and counter and counter, and you'll see themes of old technology being recycled in a different form for the current battlefield, right?
One very short-term example I have of this is that when in World War I, when planes became a thing, they started off with men with pistols because they didn't have the synchronization gear. And then the synchronization gear came around and all the pilots stopped carrying pistols. And then you had those jagoffs who would be coming around shooting at the people who were parachuting. And so, guess what? You go back to carrying pistols again. In fact, the M1911 is to this day the only pistol that has down to pilot.
Okay. So,
yeah,
Stretch
was the
says
standard sidearm for the American officers from 1911 to, I believe, 1999.
Yep, in 1999 they switched to the 9mm, the cowards.
To this point, people often wonder why rifles still have bayonets as part of their standard equipment.
Oh, because
sooner or later,
fight is a spear.
Because sooner or later you run out of ammo, and sooner or later the enemy is not over there, the enemy is here, right? And then you need a spear. Basically, that is how it works. So the rifle is also a spear. Bayonets are never going out of fashion. Never going to happen. There's going to be bayonets on super high-tech laser rifles.
And also, the brilliant thing about it is, normally, if things are desperate, the enemy's ammunition can become your ammunition.
Yes.
Yeah.
You just need to make sure they come to you first.
Yep. Stretch says they're working on lasers now to burn out the circuits of drones. If we're going to have an anti-drone defense system, that's probably the only way in which it's going to work. That makes sense. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Or you're using an SA-80A1 and it jams. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So we talked about, we were starting to break down, I think, some of the scenarios in which these things happen. Moon has made us a nice basic graphic.
You can post that again in chat.
Illustrates the point. She posted it in chat. I will repost it.
She just did.
Oh, she reposted it. Thank you. Yes, that is the essence, boiled down to the absolute basics, what we're talking about, and how it works, which is perfect. I'm going to put this in an article somewhere. All right, so
always try to be simple but thorough.
Yes.
Yep.
And that's the information you basically need if you're going to write about a couple of different battles and you're not really into military science. Right? That's what
basic information you need, that everybody needs, is right there in that graphic. Right?
If you don't have that and things don't kind of work like that in general, your war isn't going to make sense.
Your war won't make sense to people who have studied or been involved in wars. Right.
Okay, so Sparkles was going to say something?
Oh, I was going to just basically chime in and say, yeah, that, and the other important thing besides this chart is logistics. always be thinking about how people are getting the shit they need
Yeah.
and why they aren't.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
here's a
And
fine
logistics
example.
is everything. Everything that is not immediately born with you is logistics.
Mm-hmm.
Rabbit,
Like,
rabbit,
here's
Right.
a fine example. Here's a fine example. The very opening of All
Just a
Quiet on
second
the
there.
Western Front.
Just a second. Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say, the very opening of All Quiet on the Western Front is why this is a great idea of logistics. The soldiers are happy. We're getting double rations. It's amazing. It's awesome. Why are we getting double rations? Oh, half the unit got wiped out, and they'd already made lunch. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, now I feel bad for being happy.
Yeah.
It's a thing in the TV series Game of Thrones. I will say that the books are much, much better for this. Do not diss Martin. He knows what he's doing. The showrunners were less effective at this. Okay, the logistics problems of Daenerys' dragons is huge, right? The thing about it is that they touched on it. They talked about it when she was occupying, I think it was Marine, the city of Marine, right? The dragons were eating them out of house and home. Somebody brought the burned bones of their kid, you know, right? Yeah, right? But they didn't touch on it in the field. Like, where I would have really liked to have seen issues about it was when they were being brought to attack the brain. I'm trying to remember the Rose Clan. What the fuck was their name?
Lannisters.
Lancasters?
Not the Lannisters. No, I'm talking about
Dorne?
No, I'm the guys what's her pickle? The young queen there, right? And the manipulative grandma type, god damn it. Why can I not remember this right now?
I thought it was Dorne.
No, Dorne was the kingdom that looked a lot like Muslim Spain. I'm talking about the people.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, tell them it was me. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like the kids are saying. Okay, those guys, right? Who were reinforcing the Lannister war front with supplies, and then the dragons attacked the supply chain, right? They didn't. No, the Mormonts are the ones up north with the brave little girl who was the leader of her clan and got killed.
Yeah. By the giant.
I will look it up because now everybody's going to shout things until we figure it out, so I'll just look it up. Just a second. Tyrells. It's the
Tyrells. Thank you.
Okay, so the Tyrells.
just
yeah. Okay, the Tyrells. Right? When the Tyrells were reinforcing the Lannisters with supplies and the supply chain was attacked. Well done. You got to do that, right? But what they should have done to lead up to it was show the dragons doing things like starting to eat some of the soldiers or their camp followers, right? Because they need so many supplies to keep them going. They're dragons. They're huge. They eat a lot. How are you going to keep that active while you're like marching, right? Especially in a countryside that's already been devastated by war and everybody's raided everything.
I was going to say, in His Majesty's Dragons, the Temeraire series, it's actually mentioned that before a major offensive, the French would starve their dragons for a day or two to add to their ferocity.
Yeah.
Because they knew they were going to get a well-cooked meal of soldier. But they had to be ferocious and willing to do that. So they would purposely starve dragons. So starvation can also be a tactic.
Yep. a medieval fantasy series that does an amazing job of logistics, if you want to understand how that works, is the series The Deed of Paxenarian by Elizabeth Moon.
I actually just started listening to that yesterday when you
Right
recommended it.
It's amazing. Now, some of you will know, by the way, for those who were like, oh, fan fiction, stupid or whatever, that series of books is a first edition campaign centering around a paladin.
Yep.
You'll recognize the pattern if you played first edition D&D. The development of the character of Paxenarian.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So, and she's brilliant, right? She's brilliant in terms of, like, everything centers on logistics in the Deed of Paxenarian. Nothing could work without it. She gives thoughts about things like how a standing army of a small nation supports itself when there is, when they don't have to defend their homeland, right? Because it's hard. Armies are expensive. Right. Okay, let's get back to our basic principles here. We were touching on heavy infantry and heavy cavalry and when they meet. Right? We were talking about how it's a bloodbath, but generally the defenders, if they're, if they've got a position they can definitely defend, have an advantage, and the attackers must outnumber them 3-1 to have a reasonable chance of success. Your other option is to destroy whatever it is they're using for defensive capabilities. And now, this is, okay, fortresses and castles and, Motte and Bailey and trenches, okay? These are all technologies developed to build a defense, right? And they work, right? The problem with what happened in we have an ad break, apparently. I'll wait for the ad break. Yeah. It says ad break ends in 1:15. So.
Oh, okay.
Just going to state that you may be hearing some more background noise. I forgot to pick something up at Best Buy, so I'm going to
it's fine.
Best Buy closer. Yeah, I'm going to grab the SATA cables that connect everything together. And I'm taking my dog with me because she's been home alone all day. And she's doing a big old puppy dog SATA. I don't want to because you're noisy, but also puppy face. You know how pets are.
No,
they know how to
dogs
twist
are.
your heartstrings.
Yeah. Some people are still on an ad break there, Stretch.
Yeah, it tells me it ends in 30 seconds, so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that I'm on the road again.
Yeah.
You know what? It's funny.
We can tell.
I have less internet interference on the road than I do at home.
Well, you're gargling.
Really?
Like you're driving underwater. That was illegible.
Hold on.
I should say inaudible, but.
We're back.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Sparkles is apparently popping in and out. So, okay. Hello, welcome back.
Now you're muted.
You're muted.
I know Zoe's barking.
Okay. All right, so heavy cavalry versus heavy infantry. It's a bloodbath. You require about 3-1 in numbers in order to successfully take over a well-defended position. Now, most people don't want to take over a well-defended position, right? Because it's really hard to get that 3-1 advantage, and it's going to be a bloodbath, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you'd rather suborn. Pretty much every castle that has ever fallen, a siege on a castle that has succeeded, has been because somebody let them into the castle, or the people in the castle or the city or whatever starved and surrendered so that they could eat.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're very effective technology. in the age of early artillery development, like, so we're talking, you know, cannons that you're rolling through the field on what looks like wagon wheels or being drawn by horses, right? The Star Fort developed. There is a Star Fort in Halifax to this day that is a we went there, right, on our trip across Canada, right, and it overlooks the Halifax harbor there, right, and you can see why they put it there, because the thing about it is that it's built basically into a hill, right. The hill gives them the advantage of view. You can see the entire water line from the battlements, right? So any ships that are approaching, you'll be able to see them coming. It's ringed around with cannons so that they can blast the shit out of whatever they see coming as soon as they get within the cannon's range, right? Why it's called a Star Fort is it's basically built like there's a wall that comes to a point, and then another wall that comes down to a point, and then back up and back down, and so on, like this. And so if you look at the layout, the pattern of the walls is shaped like points on a star, right? But you don't generally see that because they're also protected by the earth of the hill. This has incredible resistance against other people's artillery, right? So if somebody sails a ship into the harbor and starts leveling their cannon at the battlements, good luck, right? Because basically you're trying to shoot a hill. It'll do some damage, but mostly it'll do it to the surface.
The true effectiveness of a Star Fort also comes from the design principles behind it. Essentially, what the biggest problem with early cannons and forts were that you had blind spots. You had places that you could not hit with a cannon. The Star Fort remedied that by allowing these points that come out of the walls while also having walls and cannons on the walls. In this instance, if anyone came right up to the wall, you wouldn't be able to miss now. Your side cannons would hit them for you. It was an amazing change in mobility for the cannoneers and defenders, and made forts all the more dangerous. It actually revitalized basically castles.
Yeah, wonderful things. In my Weird West world, where we're back down to basically Wild West technology, people went back to Star Forts. Yeah, and flat walls are more vulnerable to incoming fire, but exactly. So the points brace each other against that, and the fact that it's covered in dirt on the outside, which is generally a curve, really effective. Yeah, really effective. Very good tech. Became obsolete when you could drop a bomb into the middle of it.
But you know where the dirt on the outside of the wall came from?
Sparkles, you are really crackly.
Yeah, we couldn't hear that one at all. Okay, but no matter, right? So if you're going to have heavy infantry face heavy cavalry, right? Then if you want the heavy cavalry to win, you've got to think about how they're going to break the defensive line, right? Part of the problem in World War I and why we ended up with trench warfare. Welcome back, Sparkles. This being a special favorite subject of Sparkles, I'm sure he will have things to say. It's because basically what was happening is that both sides of the army, right, both sides of the conflict were trying to create a defensive bulwark. And the only way they could do that was by digging trenches into these big areas, right? And the problem is they both entrenched. So this is two castles shooting at each other, right? And neither side can effectively cut off the other's supply chain for miles and miles and miles, which is why they built it in a line like that, right? So basically it's just two castles shooting at each other until one side tries to run through no man's land to take over the other side, in which case it's just like a castle battle. You need 3-1 and it's going to be a bloodbath, right?
One of my favorite things about this, to just show you how entrenched these things were, was in the Battle of the Somme.
Great example.
The Battle of the Somme began with the Germans the Germans being hammered by the British for 7 whole days. Artillery, creeping barrage, you name it, they leveled the ground. Actual death total, not that much. So the British sent over 50,000 new recruits. They were dead by the end of day. All 50,000. This is because trenches are not just a hole in the ground. In fact, their supply lines stretch miles behind them. They are incredibly hard to destroy. They're incredibly hard to disable. And because the supply lines are this long range of trench networks and stuff, you could hammer the supply line and not hit anything.
Yeah. Again, technology that is develops for a reason. People really aren't idiots. There's a myth about, stupid, lazy British generals sending Brits and colonial troops and UK troops to war and being stupid and not knowing anything. But the truth is, technology had done such a shift since the wars they were trained in that they had no way of knowing how to deal with the war they were fighting and what to expect. They trained to fight for one war and got a completely different war and then had to adapt on the spot.
Just to give you an idea of the intellectual difference between these wars, Britain and France had to pull generals out of retirement, and these were generals that had fought in the Boer Wars and in colonial wars. So they were going against people with spears and, that 100-year-old muskets. They were not going up against people with the same technological level. In comparison, Germany pulled 2 that had retired only a few years afterwards. But all of these generals, the most recent thing that they had read about was the Franco-Prussian War 40 years earlier. That was their most recent thing to go off.
The other thing is, I love you, Sparkles. You're not wrong, but it's a beautifully American take. Now I'll do kind of a Canadian take. The Canadian take, he's not wrong, right? He is right. That is mostly what they had been doing, right? Fighting people who did not have the same technological level. But when they did, right, the best technology of the war of that time for war was lines of rifles shooting at each other and approaching, right? With cavalry trying to pick people off on the sides and whatnot, right? And then they ended up with the machine gun, which necessitated trenches, right? And it changed the whole thing, right? Completely different war. So yeah, they're not stupid. They're just fighting the wrong war with a different set of technology.
I mean,
isn't that kind of what he just said?
Yeah, we discussed this before, Sable, where the first battle of World War I was the British versus the Germans in France, and what they did was, and I love this because you see this beautifully in Warhorse with Tom Hiddleston, I believe, the guy who plays Loki. Basically, they did a cavalry charge against a German machine gun line. It was stated that there was 150 cavalrymen, and they captured 150 horses and 4 officers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that any of this implies stupidity. It implies being caught unaware, though.
Of the technology.
Basically, these guys were like...
That's my opinion of it.
No, you're right. You're right. I agree with you completely, Moon. Right? Being caught unawares, sure, but how could anybody have known exactly what to expect? Right? It's kind of like the Litromantic houses and the armies of the world suddenly having to face a zombie apocalypse. A supernatural zombie apocalypse.
Kind of
lost.
I'm confused as to...
You're confused as to... You're not saying anything wrong.
You guys are kind of just saying the same thing in different words, and I'm confused as to why we are continuing to say these things. What's going on now?
I guess we're just trying to give different examples and make a point. That's all.
Okay.
Right? The reason why I
Sorry, I'm getting to a point where I'm kind of fading.
Okay. We don't have to stay, hun. I appreciate your help, but if you're not up to it, it's cool.
Loves.
Loves. Yeah.
I do think I need to go though. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's fine.
Take care, man.
Thanks for
Take
hanging out.
care,
You were
love.
very
Love.
helpful. I really appreciate your graphic. You're awesome.
Yeah, your graphics are awesome.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Really
Bye.
cool.
Bye.
Love you, man.
Now, I think what probably confused Moon there is that I said that's an American take, here's a Canadian take. The American take being, oh yeah, but they were always fighting people with spears, so they didn't have any idea how to deal with real tech. You know, right? I'm
Which
like,
is a common myth.
no, it's
Common
different tech.
myth.
Yeah.
I was gonna say it was a common myth. Like I said, spears, which I really shouldn't have, because let's be fair, the Boers, which were European settlers in Africa, had been there for so long they basically formed their own culture. They had rifles and muskets and stuff, but they were over 100 years old at that point. They still had like gunpowder weapons and stuff. It just wasn't as up to date as the British, and the British were not used to fighting fully militarized force. They were fighting rebels and they were fighting rebels and basically people that they did not deem as a firearm, where like the Boer War.
Yeah, the Zulu War.
Yeah, the Zulu War. So people that they didn't consider their level. And then the Germans come out with the machine gun and the tank. And they're like, we don't know how to deal with this.
Yeah, exactly, right? Stretch has a good point there, right? The commanders didn't believe reports of the machine gun fire. Well, that's true, but there's two ways in which that went horribly wrong, right? Where the intel system broke down, right? One was that, yeah, the commanders didn't believe it because they'd never heard of anything being capable of causing that kind of devastation. They couldn't imagine how it could be the case until they saw it
in World War
themselves.
II when people were described what happened with nuclear bombs. Right?
Nobody believed that.
Nobody
initially
believed
either.
them. It was just too unbelievable.
Another great comparison of that is, I've mentioned this countless times, the American Civil War. When European analysts and observers were in the American Civil War, they sent back that, the Americans were building armored trains and trenches. They had trenches in the battlefield, like the battlefield. They were basically, they had the Gatling gun. And when the European monarchs and military command structures heard about this, they're like, there's no way military and war would advance this fast. Like, there's no way. Like, we do things in line still. It's like, there's no way this would happen. And then what happened when they faced another European power of equal length? Things got real fast.
They genuinely thought that it was propaganda, right? But here's the other thing that happened. This is a problem in war, right? And in armies. And it's one of the reasons why I play Queen Sable as being as down to earth and approachable by the people as I can. This is a strategy. This is not Sable trying to be cool. There's a reason for this. And the reason is that people start to sanitize reports to their leaders.
Yeah.
Right?
There's a phenomenon, I can't remember what it's called, but yeah, basically as the report goes up the line, it becomes more and more sanitary and more easy on the ears. So when, the lieutenants tell the captains we lost a regiment, the captains tell the majors we lost a battalion. The majors tell the colonels we lost a company. The colonels tell the generals we lost a platoon. And all of a sudden, they're wondering why they have no troops.
Yeah, and the military leader has no idea what's actually happening on the ground when that happens, right? So modern armies have done things to get around that. This is one of the reasons why the soldiers on the ground have operational cameras a lot of the time, so that these reports and footage can come back to the guys in charge and they can see what's actually happening, right? And make informed intel decisions. And hello, whoever just popped in. I haven't seen yet. Oh, hello, Flub. Right? So yeah, right? This is a phenomenon that happens. One of the reasons why Sable tries to be a monarch of the people is because she wants to know what's actually fucking going on the ground. She doesn't want anybody to sanitize reports to her. She wants to understand how deep the housing crisis is. She wants to know whether people are starving. She wants to know how many troops are actually going to assault the Warren. She wants this information. She wants it from the perspective of the people who are dealing with it, right? Because it will make her make more effective intel or decisions based on accurate intel, right? It's one of the reasons why I've said that the big Lapin advantage is their intelligence network, right? And this isn't spies necessarily, although that's part of it too. It's all about getting information so that they can make intelligent decisions, right? Very important.
That's exactly what all officers are supposed to be for.
So this is a thing for notes for writers or for game masters. Let's focus on that. This phenomenon. Hey there, Kit. This phenomenon of sanitizing reports as they go up the line. This is especially big in armies where it's like, you know, the troops are more afraid. Remember I said in the previous round of this that if your troops being more afraid of you than the enemy is a strategy that it can be effective for keeping them working, like, you know, your stereotypical Dark Lord, right? Okay, but the problem is nobody wants to tell him we had a failure.
Yeah, because look what Darth Vader did.
Right? Like that is the dumbest shit in the world to do to the guy who tells you something went wrong, is kill the messenger, right? Or punish the messenger. So if you want your big, you know, say your big evil empire, whatever it is, right, is going to curb stomp the little nation that it's going up against, right? Unless the little nation with a plucky group of heroes does something amazing and cool to circumvent them. This is one of the ways in which they can do it, right? Is to take advantage of those holes in the intelligence network.
Yeah. Right. And if you're a good game master, you'll give them props for doing that, right? Understanding that Lord Doom, right, is thinking that everything's going hunky fucking dory, and nobody's telling him about these adventurers that are wiping out battalions of fucking goblins.
So in one of my games campaigns, we did Descent into Avernus, and I said that Zariel was like fighting this huge war, and as she was fighting this huge war, she wasn't worried about the adventurers. But when they killed one of her barons, that was like the dude hunting people down. They're like, why does she suddenly have wanted posters of 1,000 soul coins for us? Dude, you just killed one of her generals. You're super surprised it's not higher.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. You know, but that's the thing, right? If your leader is benevolent and they're too benevolent, nobody wants to hurt their feelings. Right? So they dumb it down. They dull it down until it's sanitized, and what they hear is, we're doing just great, sir. You know, and they never hear that, you know, one of the battalions was wiped out by guerrilla insurgents. Right?
It's another reason why Queen Sable makes no attempt to sanitize her language unless she's in a diplomatic situation. Her citizens know she swears, right? The reason why she does this is so that her troops know that she is a soldier. So she can take it. If you tell her the entire battalion was wiped out, she can go, okay, and now we're going to do this instead, right? Because she wants her soldiers to know she's a soldier too. Yeah. I have made these character decisions with reason, not just my personality. That is part of it, right? Yeah. But the other part is it's intentional because I want Sable to know information. Yes, we do have a full pack Owsla today, Kit. With your arrival, that's everybody. James is lurking in the chat, and you've seen Flub and Stretch talk. Yeah. But that's not why Commander Stretch is always honest with Sable. People get honesty whether they like it or not by nature, which is one of the reasons why she keeps him around.
Rabbit, 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 rabbit.
I was gonna say, this reminds me of a scene from Blackadder where they're like, "We've just captured land from the enemy," and they walk over to what looks like a map. It's like, "Oh, great! Tell me, what scale is this?" It's 1-to-1, sir. It's 1 foot by 1 foot. It's just like, excellent, a foot that the enemy does not have.
Yeah.
It's just like,
yeah. Commander Kit also says it like it is. Yes, he does. Another reason. I don't want yes men around me. Not for my military commanders. No, I do not.
Or her bodyguards, right?
Or my bodyguard.
You know, when you're going to trust your life into the hands of somebody, you don't hold secrets from them. You know?
And this is also why the Owsla is traditionally given a lot of leeway in the way in which they carry out their duties. And even if Sable disagrees with you, she'll back you. Because if you don't, you have to be trusted to make your own decisions so that you can tell her things like it is so that she has the actual information. Yes, 100% Flop. Exactly. All right, so moving on. Let's talk about heavy cavalry versus light infantry.
Okay.
Heavy cavalry will crash light infantry. Can we think of some examples of how this has occurred?
the Blitzkrieg.
The Blitzkrieg.
The Blitzkrieg? Yes.
Yep.
That's the most famous.
Unfortunately, that is the case of the Blitzkrieg, where the French had armored their lines with light infantry, fast mobile units that could go to a single spot, because that's what they were expecting. They were expecting the Germans to come and hit one spot, so they put all these troops along one line, so that if there was an attack, they could all quickly move to one spot. Unfortunately, the Germans attacked all the line at one time using tanks and heavy infantry in such a lightning fast way that the French could not react. Is why the French lost so quickly, because it was a strategy and a tactic that had never been used in warfare before, and it was one that no one was expecting.
Yeah,
and it was amazingly effective until we learned about it.
Yes, exactly. Which is why Hitler's strategy depended entirely upon taking as much territory as they could as quickly as they could before the advantage of surprise was lost. Yeah, absolutely. Stretch says recon coming across a full tank column. Yep, exactly. Right. That's ugly. Let me think more here about how this works. Yeah, I'm trying to think of some like Bronze Age type examples, right, or medieval examples. I mean, I can think of lots of little ones, but nothing that stands out, because one of the technology of knights developed is because most people in medieval Europe were fielding light infantry, right? And heavy cavalry could just, they've got the advantage of mobility because against infantry because they're on horses, and they got the advantage of and whatnot. So they're harder to damage. They have greater offensive and defensive capability, right? So
Actually, the only example I can think of is actually the opposite of that. That's the Battle of Agincourt. That's heavy infantry versus cavalry.
Yeah.
Yes, that was. We'll discuss the Battle of Agincourt because that has wonderful historical lessons for us. When we get to that example, definitely going to talk about it.
Well,
Right?
basically, that was light infantry against heavy cavalry, so archers.
Yes.
That is true. Archemen and spearmen, they weren't the heavy armored knights that were
No.
that were, normally consistent. So this would actually be a very good example, but this is also the opposite of how this failed.
Yeah, it's
Good
how.
morning, little Sib. Granted.
Yes, of course you can come aboard.
There we go. Now we have this situation.
Yeah, but as Aaron was saying, the problem with cavalry, it's hard to find. The best one that I can think of. Well, no, that isn't even work. I was going to say Battle of Waterloo, and that's also light infantry versus cavalry.
I hope you guys
It's
heard
1
that better than I
p.m.
did.
here. Stretch.
Yep. Yeah, Agincourt is a good example of how makes a difference, and taking advantage of terrain can resolve what would normally be a much different situation.
Yeah.
Actually.
And the Battle of Waterloo utilized tactics and new equipment to scare the horses into a line rather than over an open field.
Yeah.
Without these two things, normally heavy cavalry would destroy light infantry. But if you have the right tactics and the right tools, light infantry can easily overwhelm heavy cavalry.
Yeah.
This is the thing. So a lot of people, I really hate this in fantasy, and this is a myth that I want to point out if I could.
Yeah.
I really hate in books when like the horses run into barbed wire and stuff. No, a horse is a sentient, thinking thing.
It's
it
not
has its
gonna
own
run.
stance on self.
Yeah.
It has its own stance on survival. It knows what's going to hurt it. So when you look at films at Waterloo, great film by the way, you'll notice that the horses are running away from the giant spear point because they know the spears are sharp and they know the spears are going to hurt them. And this is what the fatal flaw of Waterloo was.
Yep.
Was that the English were able to fix bayonets and basically lead the already charging heavy cavalry into a line and into a valley where they could just hammer them. Similarly, that happened in Agincourt. Basically led them into a murder hole.
Yep. Into a place that takes away their mobility advantage.
Yes. Stretch 100%. That is actually a very good example in fiction of exactly what we're talking about. Can I address that, actually? The Battle of Hoth and The Empire Strikes Back. Attacks and ATSTs versus rebel infantry. You notice that the objective of the rebels was to buy enough time to get the fuck out.
Yeah,
not to defeat the Imperials. They were fucked, right? And they knew it, right? Their only hope was to use their light cavalry, the fighters, to delay the heavy cavalry as long as possible, knowing that the casualties would be gross. Yes.
And in the comic books, they actually tell you the casualty total. I can't remember the exact number, but it was basically
in the book
like
they tell you too.
Fingers. They're like 3 to 1, yeah.
Yeah. In the book, The Empire Strikes Back, they tell you the figures too.
Yeah. Yeah. Flub says, don't mechanized infantry come across? Yes. And actually it did. And it speaking of the Battle of Hoth, which is another thing that we can, like carrying on with that example, the conditions of Hoth were very hostile. It was very cold. It was slippery, right?
Right. And the snow speeders, they were having trouble adapting them to the cold. Right?
So yeah, exactly, right? But the light cavalry in that situation, fighters, were able to use the terrain against the AT-ATs and the AT-STs by doing things like tripping up their legs with a cable so that they slipped on the slippery ground and got stuck, right? Yes, that's a terrain condition and it had an effect, and that was good tactics to deal with the situation as presented.
They use flying vehicles rather than than ground vehicles. Right? What's generally unknown that they describe in the books a lot more is that the Imperials have a basic hard-on against air vehicles, against air speeders and the like. Right? They don't like them, so they don't use them as much. Right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I think we've pretty much covered that idea, and people have the general gist of it now, right? I mean,
Okay.
thank you for the Battle of Hoth example, Stretch. That's perfect because everybody's seen The Empire Strikes Back. They can look to that and go, "Oh, yeah, good example." Yeah. Also, the Gungans versus droid armies. Yeah. Yeah, that too. Anything else you'd like to say, guys? To light cavalry versus heavy infantry.
No.
Barbarossa is muted. I don't know if he intends. I'm going to assume there's a dog barking or something. Let's take another short break because I need to grab a drink and whatnot before we get into light cavalry versus heavy infantry.
Okay, we're gonna go on this break for, we're gonna call it 15 minutes so I can grab a quick bite to eat and stuff.
Caramel, Tempest, because you did marshmallow last night. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, okay.
No, mixed them, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
You had me
You
the
had me at bourbon.
Stretch. Yep. Okay,
Okay.
and we'll be back in a few minutes, guys.
Yeah.
Don't go away. I'm back. We've lost Sparkle. His computer is not keeping up, apparently. So we'll just carry on in a minute here. Enjoy. Well, no, I'm not going to jump in 38 seconds. Give me a minute and I will. Did somebody miss giant robot talk? Sort of. I like giant robots too. Mech Warrior, awesome game. Okay.
Well, we're back, but we're not back.
Hello. Oh, I
Hello,
should
Tempest. And everybody, welcome Tempest to the stream.
How's everybody doing today?
Sable's AFK.
Oh, is she? Okay.
AFK, all fucking kinky.
Yes, of course she is.
Yeah.
Ah, hello. I see we have a Tempest.
Yep,
Yes,
I
we
told
do.
him you were
Hello.
AFK.
I was.
You're not anymore?
No, I'll be on camera in just a minute. I can keep talking for a minute if we're doing off camera for a sec. I'm just eating is all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing too. I have yogurt. Yogurt with jam.
If you guys want me to continue for a minute, you don't care if you see my face or not for a few, then I could. Or
It's
I
all
could
right.
wait.
It's all right. We'll just hang out for a few. Stretch just left to go see what he can sort for dinner.
Makes sense.
Makes sense. It's 9:30 there. Of course, it's dinner time.
And then nobody talks, of course.
Yeah, nobody
Yeah.
has anything to say.
Not a damn thing.
God damn it.
By the way, yes. Big T approached me with a good idea.
Oh, yeah? Hey,
Oh,
Sparkles.
hey, Sparkles back.
Yay, Sparkles.
And I think I got all of the good parts that are missing now. So hopefully I can start building this thing.
You're,
Rabbit, rabbit,
Cool.
rabbit, 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 rabbit.
Yes, but I heard it.
Rabbit, rabbit,
Yeah.
rabbit, 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 rabbit.
I'm just eating, so I'll go back on camera in a minute here.
Okay.
But welcome back.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were about to address the next subject is what? Light cavalry versus heavy infantry.
Okay.
Examples in history and, fiction.
Charge of the Light Brigade.
Charge of the Light Brigade.
Yeah, why don't you go into that here before I get back on camera, Sparkles?
Oh, are we talking about it right now?
Yeah.
We could.
Okay, so just a little context. We're in the middle of the Crimean War, which is infamously known throughout history as the war that was poorly led on all sides. The
Yeah.
British have just been told that they have been pushed back, and they are now in front of this valley known as the Valley of Death. And they are aware that the Russians are going to be taking the guns that are over this hill. They are told that, they're going to be leading a charge against these guns that are being taken by the Russians. The Russians should not have them prepared. And very famously, he points over the entire battlefield and says, we need you to go into this direction. Which is not a direction. That's a wave of the hand. So they don't have any real direction.
Yeah.
And they're led by a glory hound. It's like, all right, the Light Brigade will be following the Heavy Brigade. The Heavy Brigade leading the charge. To which the man is like, freaking no. I'm simplifying this, of course, for context.
Yeah.
And this man decides to lead the Light Brigade into the Valley of Death. He's believed that the Heavy Brigade will be following right behind him when they see them charging already. However, and this is where it gets confusing, as they're going into the Valley of Death, a man with a message is telling them something we don't know, because the messenger and the leading officer are both killed by a cannonball. But they decide this is no problem, we're gonna keep going. And basically, they keep going up this hill towards the Russian cannons as the Russian cannons are firing on both sides. See Starfort for reference. It wasn't a Starfort, but it might as well have been.
Yep.
Listen to
And
Trooper.
as soon as they reach the top,
The Trooper by Iron
as soon as they reach the top, they realize, oh, that is about a 16-inch barrel looking at me. And let's just say there's a reason why there's not another charge of the Light Brigade and why all the poems are really sad about it.
Yeah.
You see, but that was guys who... Oh, no, go ahead.
It was seen as a monumental failure, but the British propagandized it as loyal soldiers following their generals and their hearts to try and defend England from those guys.
The guys over there.
Yeah. And yeah, the reason the Light Brigade happened was insufficient direction, insufficient leadership, and general chaos following the death of its two major officers. That happened before they even entered the valley.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's an example of how the normal tactical situation is completely turned on its ass by bad planning, shitty intel, and, unique conditions.
Very vague description of that direction.
Yeah, that direction. Yeah, good move there, boss. Okay. All right. Normally, right, in a situation where we have light cavalry and heavy infantry, light cavalry takes out heavy infantry.
Yep.
Okay? That is an example where the exact reverse happened and the reasons why it happened. So pay attention to that kind of stuff, guys. You can learn a lot from historical battles, right? If you want a force to seem overwhelming, oh my fuck. The Mongols are about to descend upon us and destroy everything. We are screwed, right? Those are ways in which you can disrupt that, right?
Right.
Like I was saying, the main reasons that the Light Brigade failed were that their leaders didn't give them any orders, and when in actual combat, the NCOs who should have been leading the battle were immediately wiped off the face of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Remember my whole speech about NCOs, non-commissioned officers, and why you need them?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I often like to joke that NCO does not mean non-commissioned officers. They're necessary combat officers.
Yeah, necessary combat officer.
officers. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very effective tactic. Other people don't necessarily use it, but I think it's very effective.
Yeah, the Russians
Yes.
have no NCOs.
Nope, they just have enlisted and officer, and
Yep.
you can tell there's a big intelligence gap between enlisted and officer.
Part of the problem is that sanitized report thing that I
Mhm.
mentioned, right? Because Putin is not getting the information because nobody wants to tell him that was a disaster, sir. Yeah. Yep. See, the Ukraine-Russian war right now is
Oh,
such
you
a
heard
good
that
example.
Putin assassinated the head of the Wagner Group, eh?
Yeah,
What's that?
Putin assassinated the head of the Wagner Group this morning.
Oh yeah.
the heads.
Uh-huh.
The heads.
Oh come on! You
the
didn't
heads-
see that coming?
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
that
it-
was, yeah.
It wasn't just the head; it was the heads. Like a
Yeah.
lot of them were on a plane, and it crashed, quote unquote,
It was
crashed.
shot down.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mhm. Sure did. hmm
Yeah.
We have an
I
ad
want you to
break in
believe
progress. We
the
might as well wax
flash
rhetoric
after
about
it
this
got
for a
hit
while.
The plane crashed after it was shot down.
Yeah.
Naturally, when the plane is shot down, it crashes. Yes. hmm
Ergo, the plane crashed. But yeah, no. Normally, when it comes to light infantry and it comes to heavy cavalry, the light infantry is able to disable a lot of the defenses, as I mentioned before, sappers and skirmishers,
hmm
i.e., the polearm. And this is where we go back to the Battle of Waterloo,
Waterloo.
where the infantry was able to lead, and that's the most effective tool that the infantry has, is to lead the enemy into a position where it cannot do what it's good at, i.e. Waterloo. They led it to where the horses couldn't go forward anymore.
Right. And horses don't like going backward.
No,
Yeah, I'd like to
there's
wait until
one-
the end of the ad break, but there's a particular scenario I want to address as well. There we go. We have a Tempest. Hello.
Hello.
yeah.
Got about 8 seconds for our ad break here. Apparently, there.
Yeah.
Sparkles and hey, Stretch, welcome.
No,
How doing?
Hello, hello.
not too bad. I'll be in and out while I'm cooking dinner. I'm just waiting
Yeah.
for the oven to preheat at the moment.
No worries. No worries. All right.
Because of course
So,
you're cooking
do
dinner. It's
continue,
9:30 at
Sparkles.
night.
Yeah.
Tempest is eating breakfast at 1:30 in the afternoon. Nobody has any right to throw any mud at anybody else in this room.
Nope.
Yep.
Oh goddamn, that's
I
good.
just ate lunch.
Okay, so maybe Aaron has the right to throw mud at the rest of
A
us.
little mud. Yeah.
Aaron, the normal one in the conversation, impossible.
Although
That
I will
does seem
point out
odd.
that
Like me,
sometimes
while I've
Aaron
got
has
no
had
right-
ice cream
Impossible.
for dinner.
And while I've got no right, it doesn't mean I'm not going to.
Come possible.
Hey, Stretch. Good to see your face.
What's that line from The Simpsons? Me? Dumb impossible.
Yeah.
Yep.
What?
Yeah,
Detail?
exactly.
That line.
Impossible.
All right, so Barbarossa, please continue. You were describing the Battle of Waterloo.
So the Battle of Waterloo is effective because the light infantry was able to lead the heavy cavalry into a position where it was not comfortable being. Ergo, a place where it wasn't moving forward. Because horses don't like going backwards, and turning a horse around, because it is a sentient living creature, doesn't know exactly how to do that in a crowd. And that is where they're able to rain death on them. So light infantry and heavy cavalry, the only advantage that the light infantry has is to lead the enemy into a position where it is not comfortable. Ergo, they lose that mobility and that speed.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a situation where
Using
the
terrain.
cycle doesn't work, right? Where they disrupted what's expected on that wonderful graphic that
Right.
Lynn shared with us.
Which
That
also-
I'm going to share again.
Also, it's like Stretch said, it's like karate. Right? For every move, there is a counter move. For every counter move, there is a counter move. Right? You know, even though light cavalry or heavy cavalry will take out light infantry, right? Light infantry can maneuver the heavy cavalry into a place where they can't fight from. Right?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Pike block.
So let's go back to where we were about to talk about, which was light cavalry versus heavy infantry, right? And scenarios. Okay, the big one that sticks in my mind about this particular scenario in history was the tale of the Crusaders trying to march on Acre and then Jerusalem, right, in the Third Crusade. Okay, so what we have is a whole bunch of heavily armored knights, and you know, not all knights not all knights are cavalry, right? Only the very wealthy ones are generally cavalry, because only they can afford to take the war horse, the horse that carries them, and the horse that's carrying both their supplies, right? Okay, remember I said you need 3 horses, right? So minimum. Better if you have more, because they get tired. You cannot just ride them from sun up to sundown.
Yeah. And remember, we're talking
They're not cars.
Here. We're talking heavy chain armor. You know? And generally better fed people than the peasants, so they're bigger.
Hey, AG. Yeah, so that's, you know, that's not as nearly quick going as you think, right? Generally what I do, by the way, if you want to estimate the time that it takes like horses to move over land, right, I generally go to Google Maps. I find the bike directions, and that's roughly what it's going to take. It's a little faster than walking, not that much.
It's true. If you take bike directions to go from Los Angeles to Japan, it tells you to get in a kayak.
Not anymore, sadly. They've changed.
Oh, they did? Oh.
Sad. That's disappointing. Did it tell you to get on a ship?
Yeah, it told me to get a kayak.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So, but here's the example. The Crusaders are marching on Jerusalem in the Third Crusade. And they're all armed, you know, big heavy metal suits of armor, right? Chainmail at the least, usually, right? Which, by the way, you have to wear something called a gambazon underneath, which is a quilted padded shirt, right? Because otherwise the armor will pinch and bruise and cause worse bruises than getting hit by a stick smacking the armor into you. You get worse. We call it armor bite in the SCA. We had lots of it. I can tell you some stories you don't want to hear about places you don't want armor bite. Anyway.
Chainmail only stops you getting, well, you kind of prevents you getting cut. It doesn't stop concussive force.
Actually, that's wrong.
It does, but it's not as effective as plate.
Because the way that it's designed is that all the weight is worn on your hips and shoulders, because you fold the chainmail over your belt, right? So that it takes the weight off, and that leaves a lot of heavy chain hanging from your shoulders. And when you hit that with even a blunt object, it doesn't move as much. It spreads shock out. Yeah,
it helps, but you're right. It's not nearly as effective as plate, and its primary purpose is to keep you from getting cut. You're quite right. It may prevent your bone from getting broken, but it won't maybe, right? But it won't prevent it from getting bruised or damaged. And cartilage is still fucked, which is why they often have like hard plates on the elbows and the chainmail on the arms, right?
Well, yeah, because you have to be able to move the elbow.
Also, while we're on the subject of armor, chainmail is not as heavy to wear as you think.
No.
Right? It actually feels fairly light when it's on you because it's good technology. It's designed to distribute the weight really well. One thing, though, is that it wears you out more quickly.
The thing about chainmail, it's mostly air.
Yeah, it is. It's mostly air. Right? The metal is
but
actually
protected by air.
Yeah. Right. So it doesn't feel heavy to wear, but you will get tired more quickly because you are actually pushing more weight around, right? It's like if you suddenly gain 20 pounds, right? You would get tired more easily. It's just like that. Also, armor doesn't breathe very well. It's hard to sweat in armor.
Well, especially
Right.
in Gamazon.
Right, yeah. Okay, so now these guys are moving through a desert in this armor. So what's happening is that it's primary heavy infantry, armored guys in suits walking, right?
Heavy infantry and heavy
marching.
cavalry. Oh,
There are some heavy cavalry, but yeah, it's more heavy infantry, right? Because this is my example of light cavalry versus heavy infantry, right? Okay, so what the Muslim troops were doing was getting on those lightweight, fast Arabian horses,
unarmored.
riding in, right? Shooting at them out of range of most of their weapons because they didn't have a lot of light cavalry themselves, right?
Well,
It's
that
not
and
like yeomen,
crossbows were forbidden to be used.
right?
So
But they're
most-
like shooting at a distance where the knights can't get to them. Once the heavy cavalry gets to them to chase them off, they just ride away because they're faster. They're like, and this is why the Crusaders got fucking slaughtered, right? Anybody who believes that they took Jerusalem in the Third Crusade is wrong. The only crusade that was actually successful was the first one.
The First Crusade, yeah.
That's it.
Also, the Arabians isn't like smart because they knew from the First Crusade that they had these heavy armored horses, right?
Hmm.
So what they would do was they would use their light Arabian horses and put a dune in between them and the heavy cavalry. So when the heavy cavalry went to do that awesome charge that we see in the movie, they would break their ankles because the sand would swallow up the super heavy armored horses. It's
Yep.
like trying to drive it through mud. It's not going to work well for you.
Yeah, you've ever tried
Also-
to go jogging on the beach?
Also,
There you go.
because of the patriarchy, now here's where we get into this, male horses were more prized than female horses. Right?
That's-
Except the Arabians prized mares because of their better tempers.
Yep.
So the European horses were often fucking off chasing the Arabian mares.
Yep.
Little known fact
Yeah.
about war. Yeah, yep, I like that one.
Some really
All right,
weird
so
stuff.
that's my big example. Another big example of the effective use of light cavalry is a lot of conflicts with Mongols. I've also mentioned that before. There are numerous examples. I'm not going to, I don't remember any specific battle to cite, but that is one of the reasons why they were so deadly to the Europeans, who relied significantly more on heavy infantry.
Mhm.
Right? I bet you guys can think of some other examples that you'd like to share as well from either fiction or history. You got one, Stretch?
Yeah, I've just written it in chat. Samurai. They were horse archers.
Yes.
Their main weapon was the Yumi bow. In fact, the katana was very low on the list.
Yeah.
The most common samurai sword was the tashi. And that was just a sidearm. They had spears, obviously mainly bow. They've got the naginata.
I have a big
Nagamaki.
one from here in the States.
Okay.
They were more used to Nagamaki
Indian-
than Naganatas.
Indians versus the U.S. Army.
Yes. Tell them about it. I bet they don't know.
Well, there's a famous battle here in my own home state of North Dakota. No, I'm not talking about the Battle of Little Bighorn. I'm actually talking about the Battle of Mandan Flats, which is a little unknown battle of the many battles of the Dakota Wars. This battle was that the U.S. Army brought in about 700 troops of these, what you would classify as heavy infantry, I would assume. They were the classic American
see in a minute.
sharpshooter.
Oh, I was just saying, see Stretch in a minute. He's in and out for food, he said. Remember? Yeah.
I
Anyway.
will be right back as well. Just give me a moment.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, I'm going to classify the U.S. Army in this situation as heavy infantry because they were carrying their horses, they had cannons, they had all sorts of goods with them on their travels. And the 800 unit were then attacked by Indians. But the Indians were moving so fast around them with their fast plains horses that it was really hard to aim the cannons that were supposed to be supporting the heavy infantry. The heavy infantry couldn't hit these guys because they were moving so fast and they were getting slaughtered. And when they tried to retreat, they couldn't get the cannons turned around and they couldn't get everything back on the wagons. So they basically ended up running for their lives, dropping everything, some cases even their boots, because they were getting knocked out of their boots.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I love when people say the U.S. Army had very little effort taking down the Indians. That is not true. There's a reason why from 1830 to 1880, we dubbed them the Indian Wars.
Yeah.
'Cause it was
Here
a
in
long
Canada,
and
we would
bloody
call
process.
them Indigenous or First Nations, but yeah. 100%. Now, obviously, there are ways you can disrupt that, right? Sparkles gave you a very good example in the Battle of Waterloo. How you disrupt the advantage of light cavalry is you prevent them from moving.
Yep,
Go
you put them
somewhere
in a
where the whole
position that's
moving is
favorable to
not an
you.
advantage.
Yep. The way that I always describe it to make it easier is you ensure the cavalry is in a position that is favorable to you. Which means do not fight the cavalry, as the U.S. Army did, in an open field where they have all the movement in the rain.
Yeah. Retreat into the trees.
Yeah.
Yeah. Heavy woods are a good way to get rid of that advantage. So is rocky and hilly terrain. You can't run
If you know
horses
anything
through
about
that.
North Dakota, though, it is hills and prairies. There is no trees.
Yeah.
We build houses out of earth.
Stretch, you had something you wanted to add to that?
I have a relatively funny story about artillery versus infantry. And a great idea by Wellington. I believe it's Wellington. Well, they all lined up ready for battle, and I saw the French about to prime the cannon. Wellington just said, "Get down." All the cannons just went over their heads. Obviously, some hit because they hit the ground at some point. But instead of all being lined up like targets, just get down. Cannons went overhead and then they got up and started shooting.
Yes, and thus this is a standard tactic of war now, but it didn't used to be. Somebody had to think about that when faced with the situation.
Another, like, this is a sports term, but the forward pass in football, American football, came 40 years after the development of the game. Before that, you just passed it. You handed it off to the person. The idea of throwing it was completely unknown to football. But it was such a game changer. That's what war is. War is the person who will develop the next forward pass.
Yeah.
Because the thing that you want to do is make sure that your enemies don't collide with each other.
Yes. Okay, I think we've got a lot of good examples for that now, unless somebody's got a favorite thing they want to touch on. Otherwise, our last category is light infantry versus light cavalry, which really is much more situational. Right? Generally, the
Vietnam.
light... Yes. Yes.
Yep.
Light infantry versus light cavalry. Tell us more about how that works, Babe.
Well, basically, the North Vietnamese Army and the Chinese Army were all light infantry. They were designed for ground fighting in the jungle, right? Asymmetrical warfare, right? The Americans and others that were involved, right, countered them with light cavalry, helicopters. Right? And so light cavalry should take out light infantry. Right? But because of the jungle, their maneuverability advantage was taken away. And that's why the Americans didn't win Vietnam. Because
basically they had no idea what the hell they were shooting at.
Yeah.
They couldn't see it. And home field advantage, which is also a good point. Stretch, do you want to rack some rhetoric about that? What exactly is home field advantage and why is it an advantage?
As was relatively recently seen also in Afghanistan, both against with us lot and Russia. Same with Vietnam. Is the indigenous people knew their territory. Not only that, but dug caves, both in Vietnam and Afghanistan. You try to fight people who, in their own country, who've dug a load of caves. It's a bloody nightmare. And obviously Aaron will know, the tunnel rats, the poor bastards that got sent down in Vietnam. So, oh, it's a tunnel here. Guess where you're going?
Yeah, you go down there and tell me if there's any VC in it.
Yeah. And there were all sorts of nasty little traps and all sorts in there. Horrible. Not only that, but in Afghanistan, we trained them. US supplied them, and we wonder why we had so much trouble with them.
Smart, guys. Real smart.
Yeah. They had best equipment, best training in their own country. Mountains, caves, hard to get to. Yeah, it wasn't the cakewalk that we'd planned.
Well, considering, if I can just interject this there, Sparkles, nobody has ever won a war invading Afghanistan.
Nope, it is the graveyard of empires.
Yep.
Back to our most ancient written histories, by the way, because India had to deal with Afghanistan a lot when the Indus Valley civilization, right, was a thing. Yeah.
No joke. My favorite story from Afghanistan is after the arrival of Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great put all these statues up. Within the year of his death, they had crushed the statues and used them as, bedding and foundation for buildings. How do we know this? Archaeologists had found an entirely intact head of Alexander the Great underneath someone's stairs.
Yeah.
So there's a good scenario. Remember, we've discussed before invading Russia in the winter, right? This is stupid. Do not, right?
No.
And trying to control and fight over Afghanistan.
Yeah, Afghanistan's one of those areas. What do you call them there? Sparkles that nobody wants.
What was that?
Afghanistan's one of those areas. I don't know what you were calling them that nobody wants.
Terra Nullius.
Terra Nullius.
The place that no one wants. It's just the way that I've always described Afghanistan historically. It is a speed trap to expansionism.
Speed trap to
expansionism. A very big bump in the road.
Because unfortunately, nobody wants it, but you have to go through it anyway.
Yeah, you have to go through it to get anywhere else.
Barbarossa, could you type that in chat, please, so that people can see it, the term?
Terra Nullius.
Yes. Terra Nullius.
Yeah, okay. Let me just get onto Twitch real quick.
Sorry.
No problem.
But yes. That's important so people can look it up and check it out.
Or type in
This is a good scenario for stories, by the way. Maybe your area that your plucky defenders are trying to defend is Terra Nullius, right? In which case,
remember,
this could be fun. You could get a good comedy scenario for that one.
Literally translates to no land.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
So the reason that Terra Nullius exists, and this is true throughout history, Terra Nullius exists next to an area that everybody wants, but there is that's the balance of things. To get to where you want to go, you need to go through no land, the land that no one wants.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part.
No man's land.
Yep.
In order to get to the, planet with the unobtainium.
Yeah, the land of no oil.
Yeah. right? The land like that has the unobtainium that you need in order to maybe make interstellar travel possible without having to deal with relativity bullshit, right? Is behind a ginormous asteroid field which breaks ships like into little pieces, and you have to take it and defend it because otherwise the other guys get the unobtainium and you don't.
Another idea for Terra Nullius is actually seen in Interstellar. We have all these planets that we want to try and inhabit, but we also have massive black hole that makes time go weird.
Actually, interesting fact about asteroid belt. It's not as cluttered as you might think.
No,
Voyager 2 made it through.
No, that's very true.
Lots and lots of
big
space.
Spaces between those rocks. Rocks will push each other away, actually, over time.
Going back to a previous point on home field advantage, one of the prime example, I have two, would be the American Revolution, where the British thought they understood how the American colonist mentality was. They'd be welcomed with open arms. They also thought they recognized geography, and that wasn't the case. And the other one would be the Norman landing of England, and I'm talking about like towards the end of Danelaw, like the Battle of Stamford Bridge.
Oh,
where
Harold
they thought
Harada.
that because we have owned this land forever, we should know how to defend it. That's not how knowledge works.
Harold Harada's face is red. Came to London and wound up dead. Stamford Bridge is where he's found. Got 6 feet of English ground.
Yep. The Battle of Stamford Bridge. Harold Harada thought he understood, the English terrain, and it was Edward the Confessor? Confessor, I believe, because then he went against William the Conqueror, who basically used the terrain against him. So, home field advantage is an actual thing. Even from anywhere from the large to like the entire east coast of America to something small as Stamford Bridge.
And sports, which we're now going to get into. Sports, metaphors for war.
What is it good for?
Let me talk about how hockey works. Okay? In hockey, you have your goal. Yeah, well, that's the sport I know the best. I'm going to expect you to speak about American football, right? And I'm sure that Stretch will have something to add from the perspective of either, what the rest of the world calls football, or perhaps, rugby, maybe, right? But the sport I know best is hockey. In hockey, as a metaphor for war, right? Okay. Hockey, you have different types of troops, right? You have your goaltender, you have your 2 defenders, right? Your 2 defensemen, right? You have your wingmen, right? Or forwards, they're sometimes called, and your center. Here's how they work. Your goaltender is your heavy infantry. Your defenders are your heavy cavalry. Your wingmen are your light cavalry. And your center is your light infantry. That is how it works. If you fight them like that successfully, that's how it works.
And
so
that's why, by the way, Canadians have better fighter pilots than anybody else.
Actually, it has a bearing. There's been a couple of studies.
Yeah.
Right? Because we think about the world like hockey. So
which is
which is actually
three-dimensional motion. It's in constant motion, right? Hockey's one of those games that's in constant motion. All right.
Yep. I often joke that one of the most scary things you can do is declare war against Canadian. What's scarier than that? Declaring war during hockey season.
That's scarier.
One thing scarier than that. One thing scarier than that, and actually been known, I've heard stories of this. Armies or people fighting, and they hear bagpipes coming over the hill. They run.
Because that motherfucker is crazier than the rest of you. Because all he can do is play those bagpipes while he's walking, right? Yeah.
It's the people around him especially if they're known.
Well, I have to
especially
tell
if they're
you,
Blackwatch.
I don't know if Barbarossa heard this one, but if he hasn't, sure will back me up. In World War I and II, right, there were troops that ran ahead of the Canadian lines to tell the Germans that Canadians were coming. Because they were so bad,
They were
right? They were so violent that, German troops just surrendered because the Canadians are coming.
no joke. That's an actual thing. What they would do was they would wave the traditional English flag, and they would run like towards the German lines, and basically like as a messenger horse tell them that the Canadians were coming. When this first happened, the Germans were very confused.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't confused afterwards.
No, every other time it's like, okay, we surrender. We're not fighting them.
Now, you guys accidentally interrupted Stretch, though. He was
I'm
talking
sorry,
about
Stretch.
bagpipers on the field, and he's talking about the Black Watch. Yes, tell us about pipers on the field and the Black Watch.
Tell us about the Black Watch, dude.
Yeah, the Black Watch is elite Scottish, mainly, unit of tank drivers. I used to work with one who's ex-Black Watch. We worked at horse racing. Of course, we're both working on bar, cellar, and funny enough, logistics as well. Yeah, that was just like a battle. Tell you what, he was half the size of me, and even I want to argue with him. Calm as anything, but yeah, I wouldn't like to see him in a tank. I wouldn't like to face him in a tank anyway. He nearly killed me one day. He gave me a shot of scotch. That was quite a while after we stopped working together because the season ended. Happened to bump into him in town. Ended up back at his, says, "Oh, come round for a scotch." Now, when a Scotsman says, "Come round for a scotch," you don't mix it with anything.
Well, of course you don't mix scotch with anything.
Why were you mixing scotch with anything in the first place?
Unless you're making a rusty nail, Drambuie.
Yeah.
Scotch and Drambuie.
I suppose.
Oh, I'm sadly, due to previous alcohol poisoning, have to mix strong spirits with Coke and things. Otherwise, my mouth starts watering, and that's the first sign.
Right.
But yeah, the Black Watch, elite people in tanks, no. If you're an enemy force and you hear bagpipes coming towards you, give up or run.
Well, the worst thing you can hear coming towards you is the words "Gurkhali ho," which is the battle cry of the Gurkhas.
The Gurkhas, yes.
Yeah.
Scary motherfuckers, those guys.
Them are some scary little Indians.
Gurkhas have the Gurkhas in I have a motto for the Gurkhans. Or for the Gurkhas. The Gurkhans. The Gurkhas. I have a motto for them. You don't know how many times they're gonna stab you, but you better be sure it's a lifetime supply.
Got a story about the Gurkhas. A friend of mine is son of a ex-army guy. He was out working alongside a unit of Gurkhas, and they were all sat there like on benches and that. And I think the benches were right near undergrowth and things. Enough for a Gurkha to sneak up on behind this guy and tie his shoelaces together.
Yeah.
Trained soldier didn't notice that his shoes, laces had been tied together. He got up, tried to walk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gurkha found it hilarious.
Sure they
So
did.
did the rest of this guy's sword face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gurkha used to do that in battlefields. They would go into encampments and cut all the laces on the left boot of the soldier in the encampment, and then leave. Right?
Yeah.
Terror tactics used by the Gurkhas.
Okay, so I think we have run past the light infantry versus light cavalry now, and we're way off on a tangent, which is fine. This is actually what I intended to do for the rest of the time when we ran out of things. But there's one more element we need to cover, and that is artillery. Let me preface this before Barbarossa explains at much more length and probably much more effectively than me, right? But hockey, that's how war normally works. Quidditch introduces artillery. Because if you get the golden snitch, you win. Tell us more, Barbarossa.
There was a saying in World War I that you could always tell who you were fighting. If you fired over their heads and a white flag came up, it was probably the French. If you got scattered fire, it was the Italians. If you got quick, precise shots, that was the British. If your position was suddenly annihilated with artillery fire, that was the Americans. Artillery fire basically is the best way to put it is, you can die on a hill, but when you have artillery, the hill dies too. Artillery is just the big guns that will annihilate anything off the face of the earth. We're talking anywhere from your traditional cannons to your Dardanelles guns from the big Ottoman Empire to the howitzer, the mortar, and let's be fair, we could probably classify the atomic bomb into this.
Yeah, the atomic bomb is an artillery piece.
Yep. So basically, the artillery piece, and the reason I say this, it will devastate heavy infantry, but it's actually fairly weak against light infantry, as we see with the Gustav gun, which was taken down by 4 men and a small pack of thermite.
Tell us what makes it so devastating, Barbarossa.
The fact is that artillery doesn't leave a small pinprick hole in you. As we learned in the Battle of Waterloo, when we have a carafe with a fist-sized hole in it, there's no surviving it. Once you get hit with a cannonball, you're done. There's no surviving it. It's not.
Yeah, a cannonball can miss you by a foot and still gelatinize everything in the left side of your body. Yeah.
Yep. Not only that, but like you could die just by getting knocked off your horse with it. It's so effective. It annihilates cities. Look at World War II with the firebombing of Dresden. Look at the Civil War with the firebombing of Richmond, Virginia.
Look at the wars in the Seven Kingdoms when somebody brought dragons to the fight. Dragons in Game of Thrones are artillery. And they have all the advantages and disadvantages of artillery.
And
one of the
you know how they countered them? Other artillery.
Yep.
Yeah, pretty much. That's the only real way to do it is other artillery. Or sabotage. Right?
Yep, like I mentioned before, I believe that artillery can easily wipe out anything heavy, but it takes light saboteur skills, so light infantry, and maybe even light cavalry, to outrun it. Because as much as I love artillery and its effectiveness, that shit takes time to aim.
The big disadvantage of artillery is it tends to be difficult to move.
Yep.
Now you can change
and
that.
aim and fire.
What was that, babe?
And aim and fire. Seems to be hard to do those things too.
Right. It doesn't aim well. It's an area denial weapon in anything. It makes it impossible to move through an area due to massive damage. Yeah. It can kill broad spans of people, but only if you bunch them up, right? Which is why the light cavalry thing can be effective occasionally.
I also argue that one of the biggest disadvantages of artillery is that it requires multiple people. It is not one person on a horse. It is not one person with a gun. It's 5 guys on a cannon. It's like 20 guys on the Gustav gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a minute, guys. Just a minute.
As Stretch points out, modern artillery, right? You take it out with artillery and Air Force. Why do you take it out with Air Force? Because Air Force works like light cavalry. They're fast, maneuverable. They're not all clustered in one area, so you can't just blast them like
And they
that.
have
You
the high
might get
ground.
one, but
Actually,
have
the
a-
artillery and air force comment was about dragons because they kind of both.
Yeah. That's the problem with dragons. So you want to know how you defeat dragons? Cut off their supply line, right? Because there's only so much the army's going to put up with getting eaten to feed the dragons, guys. They're not going to be too impressed with that, right? Or take away their mobility advantage, which is what happened when they went over, right? The dragon was on ice. No maneuverability advantage. Had to be on the ground, not in the air. That is how they took out the dragon. Yes.
Or dig into a mountain.
And that's and that's the thing with artillery as well, is as we see with Tamaraire and His Majesty's Dragon, it's not just one dragon rider. It is a pilot, a co-pilot, 2 to 4 gunners, I think, depending on the dragon side, and then you have a bombardier, who is also acting as like the guy who fixes everything. Like, even with dragons, you need multiple people on it. So if you take out one person, the structure slowly starts to collapse.
Yeah, flat guns. Why we don't have dragons anymore.
Flat guns are
Okay, you bet, Tempest. Yeah.
Hang on, dragon, fly through that.
Right. Exactly. Which you could think about that when you put it to work. The army of dragon riders.
You cut out right after Army of
Castle
Dragon
isn't going to
Riders.
save you.
Actually,
Cut out right after Army of Dragon Riders.
One very minor side point. Technology. No in sci-fi or science fantasy. Jedi versus Mandalorians. Mandalorians had flamethrowers, bombs, etc. Everything that the Jedi couldn't block.
That's not
that was
true.
another reason why the Mandalorians were so effective against. I was gonna say that's another reason why the Mandalorians were so effective against the Jedi, because every time one Mandalorian died to a Jedi, they would adapt.
Yeah.
The Mandalorians are scary when they adapt.
Yeah. Beskar armor can't be cut by a lightsaber.
Yep.
That's the big thing that gave them the advantage there, although their tactics were also good. Yes. Yeah.
Training as well.
Back to artillery. That's the scary thing about artillery. The only real thing that can defeat it is something light and fast that can outrun it, or just blowing it to hell. But even then, that doesn't work with artillery versus artillery, as I mentioned with the Gustav gun, where they had about, I think, 7 different pieces hitting it, and they couldn't really hit it. It took a 4-man unit with thermite to just disable it.
Well, actually, one downside to the Gustav gun, and why it stopped being so effective, it had to be on train tracks.
Not only train tracks, they'd be on side-by-side train tracks. They had to be on 2 separate tracks. So everywhere they went, they had to build a second set of tracks.
Yeah, seriously hampered mobility. And my microwave just beeps, so I'll be back in a minute.
You bet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the modern artillery is scary as fuck, because they will do things like send a drone over the area to map it out, right? Then send those coordinates to the artillery piece, and the artillery piece will fire 5 shots at different angles that will all land with different powder mounts that will all land on that spot at the same time.
So basically what we have here is exactly a metaphor we used to have, right? Which is the light cavalry, the drones, are providing intel to the guys back in command who are making use of artillery to deal with the threat. about reached the end of what I had to say in terms of these different types of units and how they work together, and given a few examples. We've still got technically up to 40 minutes left to the stream, so I think this is a good time to talk about ways to disrupt these processes if they haven't already come up, right? And it's a good chance for people to ask questions. If people have questions they want to ask now who are still in the stream, I noticed that the chat's been quiet for a while, probably because we've been in lecture mode. But if you have specific questions you'd like to ask, you're quite welcome to do so. Just type question in all caps and then the question, or use the ask a question channel point reward so that we don't miss it.
Yeah.
And we're happy to answer any questions. I know this is a lot of information and probably going to be back, but ultimately it boils down to that simple graphic here. You can figure out how people and different units are going to react to each other based on that, unless you find a way to disrupt it. So that gives you.
I would also say, I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think would be an interesting topic to discuss at some time.
What's that?
Animals in warfare.
That is a very interesting topic.
But yeah, I'm up for answering any questions.
And if there aren't any questions, we'll quit at 2:30 today.
Yeah.
That's fine, because this has been a lot.
Yeah.
Right, so, and I hope it helps. It certainly helped me to learn all this stuff, like how this all works together, because now there's reasons why people do things the way they do in the different combat scenarios that I plan, and I think about it like that, so I know how things are going to go, unless I know how the situation is going to be disrupted. Hello, welcome back, Tempest.
Hello, I finally got the compression socks on. Jesus.
Yeah.
You have to watch the VOD. Love to you too, Miko.
Yeah.
Love, Nico.
I hope your appointment went well.
Just finished.
We ever did that?
Just about 2 o'clock.
We did, but we can do it again. Please support Miko's GoFundMe.
Camera off now.
Yes.
She is trying to cover some medical expenses. Unfortunately, the lack of socialized medicine in the United States means this is pretty much what you have to do in the United States after a certain point.
At a certain point, you sort of got to beg people for money, and it's like.
It's not. This is now a normal part of medical expenses in the United States.
Yeah,
Nothing that I get or any money that I have is. So can people, maybe chip in a few bucks, help me out?
Yeah.
Stretches off camera because he's eating. Yeah, that's fair enough.
Half a chicken. Jesus, man.
Why leave a whole? Why only eat half a chicken?
Yeah, what are you doing with the other half of the chicken?
Yeah, light snack. He needs at least half the chicken. Yes.
Wasteful.
Sable's fine with like 2 drumsticks usually.
Chicken's legs. You can do that without killing the chicken.
Sable, you would hate coming to my house then.
Oh, yeah.
No.
I feed you.
Feed me is good.
Yeah, I
won't pick at my dinner. I promise you. I will eat it. Yeah.
Yeah, Miko, I know exactly how that feels. I'm helping my dad out right now with an $8,000 medical bill for dental work. That's just his teeth.
Jesus.
To be fair, this is a man who's not seen a dentist in 20 years.
Stretch, we call those caution hots in my house. Because they usually have a sticker on them that says caution, hot, when you buy them, right? So, yeah, we call them caution hots. Yeah, it's just something we in my house call them. I don't know. If it's catching on, I hope so, because I think it's hilarious. But yeah, we get those a lot too.
Yeah.
So you get a haircut?
I actually cut my own hair. Yes.
It looks really nice.
Thank you.
Oh, it looks good, actually. Yeah, I just noticed. Shows how
Right?
observant I
Clippers
am.
on the sides and the back, and then just scissors on the top.
I would definitely want to help Miko, but after this whole ordeal of getting a new computer because mine is crapping out and giving my dad a lot of money, yeah, I'm spending like $5,000 this week.
Yeah, you can't
Stretch
spare a
says,
dollar.
I mean, I might as well. I'm spending the money.
Stretch says I need to get my clippers out, to be honest. Yes, I was noticing that your hair was...
Yeah.
I know,
Yeah.
Tempest looks great, right? That haircut suits them perfectly. I like it a lot.
I'm gonna spare a few bucks for Miko.
It is delightfully gay haircut, yes. Which is appropriate because I am delightfully gay.
Also, I don't
Which
know
is
if you
funny
can
because
tell,
those.
my hair is still wet, but I dyed it today. I just
Oh, did you?
deliberately left
I
the
know.
silver streak. They told me that I should grow it out, but I'm probably not going to. I'm probably going to get some silver dye and dye it right down.
Why not?
It's just that. Well, they suggested I don't at the hairdresser, and I'm okay. Well, if you're not going to do that, the hell? And I went, you know, I didn't say that, but I'm like, oh, okay. And then I went, did it with Box, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I
don't know why I just
I
kept
hope
this
you are
going.
well.
Yeah.
There you go, Miko. Love, love.
Yeah. When I get off stream, I'll be
Miko is
throwing a few bucks there
Miko
myself.
is an awesome being.
Yes.
And if you guys can support them in any way possible, I recommend it. They really need the help, and they really are just a lovely person.
Mm-hmm.
Jen Stretch would like you to know that he thumbs up your comment there.
Alright.
Even though he's off camera.
I thumbs up DM Stretch. Because I approve of just him being.
Yes, I agree.
I approve of him being too. Yeah, because if I didn't approve, that would be bad.
By the way, Aaron, I'm not sure if you've seen it, but I made a picture of you as a 1920s psychologist.
Picture of
yeah,
me.
like
Yeah,
good 20 years older than now, maybe, but yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
where's this?
Hold on. I'm putting it in the voice chat. But yeah, I put a little comment of like I'm putting little comments on all the images that I make for character profiles.
I suppose I'll like go over like a couple little additional notes here while we're doing that, by the way. Okay, so the purpose of heavy infantry is to deny ground, right? If there's something you must defend in death ground fight, as Sun Tzu says, right? Then you use heavy infantry if you can. Doesn't that look good, babe?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just saw it on the screen. Right?
Yeah. Dr. Aaron McRoy.
Ooh, neat.
Again, crazy cavalry charges directly toward the enemy rarely happen. And when they do, they tend to be slaughters unless somebody has like the advantage of surprise or some other advantage, a terrain advantage, something like that, right?
Yeah. And horses will not charge a pike line.
Yeah, but horses are living sentient creatures. They have their own survival instincts.
Yeah, they will not charge a pike line.
They will not charge through fire.
Yeah.
They will only go through water if they actually feel like horses really don't want to go through water they can't walk through. They're not interested in that. You really have to work to get them across. They don't like it.
Now, on the opposite end of that, infantry charges are always super effective. We see this even in the age of muskets, when there's that giant wall of cloud and suddenly you hear charge. the enemy becomes instantly terrified because now you have a wall of crazy bayonet-wielding soldiers coming from you don't know which direction. All you see is smoke.
Yep. Stretch says, yes, throw your soldiers into positions whence there is no escape and they will prefer death to flight. Sun Tzu. Yes.
Yeah.
One day I'm going to do a whole thing on Sun Tzu. Probably I'll do that coming up. And Sun Tzu is excellent.
But as I was going to say, as ineffective as cavalry charges are to heavy infantry positions, the opposite is the effectiveness of infantry charges on any heavy position.
Heavy positions, yeah.
On heavy positions, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I've said that to myself when working at a bar and so sick, yeah. Right. Okay, so remember in light infantry, actually no, this is heavy cavalry versus light cavalry, right?
Yep.
This is something I don't think we actually addressed. But in heavy cavalry versus light cavalry, heavy cavalry loses in plains or other flat terrain because they're not as quick and maneuverable. But light cavalry loses in mountain or other difficult to cross terrain because they're better armored and probably better armed, and the advantage of the mobility of the light cavalry is gone.
Take a look at the Roman cavalry attempting to trying to stop Hannibal and his war elephants as he crossed the Alps.
Mm-hmm.
The Roman cavalry could do very little because they relied on their speed and agility, which they had none in the mountains, while the elephants took up the entire path and played a game of rock, paper, I'm an elephant, fucking move.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, it doesn't look like we have any questions. It is 2:30. I think we're going to call it early.
And who are we rating? The Terrible Novelist is writing.
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't seen them in a while. Thank you all for joining us today. We'll be back tomorrow. Thank you to Barbarossa, Aaron, and DM Stretch for
we're gonna be
offering their opinions, and for Tempest for joining us, for Moon for joining us putting together that wonderful graphic. Shout outs to everybody here before we take off.
I apologize for my internet being clunky, but yeah. It's been a busy day for me.
For fuck's sakes, what's your...
What's that?
It's Mr. Teacher Writes.
It's Mr. Teacher Right? He changed it? Okay, right. Yeah.
Wait, what?
You.
We're rating me?
No.
No, we're shouting you out.
No.
Type something in chat so your name pops up.
I'm trying to shout you out before we leave.
You're like halfway down anyway.
There he is. I got him. Okay. We're gonna shout out DM Stretch as well.
Yes?
And Tempest. Of course.
I love your hair. It's great.
Thank you. I'm pretty proud of it. It's a little shorter than I wanted it to be, but you know what? It'll grow.
I was gonna say, like, that was
Mine
the thing
too.
my grandpa always... That's the thing that my grandpa always says. Never be mad when your hair's cut short. You can always grow it back. But you will always ruin a haircut you didn't cut short enough.
It's true.
But then you can always just cut more off.
Yeah, but that's
the
difficult.
Yeah, no, because if you don't cut enough off, you're prone to cut more than you need to.
Okay.
We'll be back tomorrow at our usual time of 11 a.m. Pacific.
We just rated. Yeah.
Oh well. Bye, everybody.
They know our schedule.